First ever virtual convention is about to get underway now in around about 3 or 4 hours' time. What's it going to look like?
That's a great question, Pete. This is just a first for American politics, an extraordinary moment, really, in American political history, I think. You know, these amazing party conventions, Republican and Democrat, they are absolute staples of the election calendar. The balloons, the streamers, the hoopla, everything that goes with them, thousands of journalists cramming into a city. No one is in Minneapolis, where it should have been, Milwaukee. Yeah. And basically, you know, in 11 o'clock Australian time this morning, it will start. It'll be 2 hours, 2 slick hours, presumably, of speeches and videos, and that's it for the day. And then 2 hours the next day, and the next day, and the next day, for 8 full hours, and that's the entire convention. So, you know, can they generate enthusiasm? Will people watch? You know, will people tune in? There's so many questions about this.
Well, I mean, there is potential for it to seem quite awkward in some parts, wouldn't you think, Cam? Because usually, you know, as you mentioned there's all the hoopla. There's a bit of showbiz about the whole thing. You give your speech, you drive home a point that you want to make, and then there's usually the roar of the crowds and then the waving of the flags and the colours. But there's none of that this year, so it might seem quite plain.
It'll be very tricky because, I mean, of course, Americans love to jump up at these things and applaud at great length. And the speechwriters, Pete, actually write their speeches for the applause to a large degree. So they've had to change their style because you can't just have awkward silences. And, you know, so how do these speakers do it? Do they come across with a very enthusiastic kind of voice, or do they be more moderate and straight? I mean, it's really unknown. In fact, you can be sure the Republicans who have their virtual convention next week will be watching this very carefully to see exactly what the Democrats get wrong as well as right.
Well, I guess we got a preview of that last week, didn't we, Cam, when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris gave their first speeches together?
Yeah, a little bit of a preview, a little bit of a taste of it, and that went reasonably well. But even so, you know, there just wasn't that sort of emotion that would normally go with it.
So who's up today? What are we expecting?
Well, the two big ones today, there's a bunch of governors, a couple of governors, the Michigan governor and, of course, Andrew Cuomo from New York. But the big ones, Pete, are Senator Bernie Sanders. Now, that will be interesting because he will come out there and he will exhort his left-wing followers to back Biden, even though Biden is a moderate. So that's going to be a pretty important speech, I think. The second one, I think, which will be really, really heavily watched, is Michelle Obama. She's hugely popular. She'll be coming out. She's the keynote, the main speaker, and that will be the highlight of the night.
Do you think the Sanders speech, though, will just energise Donald Trump? He's been out this morning. He's given a speech, and, you know, he's trying to hammer Biden and Harris for being, you know, left-wing extremist-type candidates. So do you think that could help Donald Trump?
It might. It depends how well behaved Bernie Sanders is, Pete, because remember in 2016, he was very grumpy during that convention. He was very unhappy with Hillary Clinton's win. This time he said he's going to back Biden, but will he use his speech to actually tell his supporters to back Biden, or will he use it also just to spruik his agenda again? Because what he's trying to do is get the Democrat Party to move left in Biden's policies. So it'd be interesting to see how he frames it.
Is it firming up where Donald Trump's going to do his speech from?
Gettysburg or the White House. It's firming up that the White House is the favourite at this point, but the Republicans haven't said that. They haven't even talked about their schedule very much. They're clearly watching how the Democrat one unfolds. You know, it's pioneer territory, so I think that's what they're doing. Interesting, you've got Trump on the Marine One there coming out. He went up to Wisconsin today, of course, which is where the Democrat convention would have been held had it not been virtual.
Yes, I mean, he's going to be heading to these swing states for the next few months, isn't he, Donald Trump, and trying to shore up that support. And there's been a couple of polls out in the last few days, Cam, that have been interesting, including a CNN poll that has Joe Biden's lead now to just 4 percentage points. So that's come in sharply. Not all that unexpected. This tends to happen the closer you get to an election, right?
That's right. I mean, that CNN poll is an outlier in the sense that the other ones are a fair bit more than that. The average of national polls is about 7.5% to Biden. But look, you're right, Pete. These polls do get a bit closer to the time. It's given Trump and his supporters definitely a spring in their step, a bit of hope. Because, you know, even a month ago, people were almost writing off Donald Trump. So that's certainly not the case.
Well, I mean, the CNN one is interesting, though, because, I mean, it's their viewers that might tend to vote Democrat. Isn't that true?
No, I think they just conduct the poll mostly. I mean, Donald Trump has actually criticised CNN poll in the past, but he quite likes this one. Look, these polls, as we know, 2016 was a perfect example. You just can't trust the polls unless they're miles apart. And at this point in time, Joe Biden is a little bit further ahead of Hillary Clinton at this point in time. Hillary Clinton was about 6 points up on Donald Trump. He's 7.5. So he's a bit of an advantage, but she lost the election, so it's far from over.
So, I mean, and following the announcement from Kamala Harris, I mean, because some of those polls, some of them, not all of them, but some of them tended to narrow, was this a suggestion that maybe Kamala Harris wasn't the right pick? I mean, what's the view been since it's been publicised that Joe Biden chose her?
Yeah, no, they haven't put those two together because these polls were taken before she was chosen. There's been one poll after she was chosen, and they said that she was a popular pick. I think 72% said popular pick versus about 20% something that said they didn't like it. Yeah. So it'll help him a bit, I think. But VPs are always a question mark. Do they really help or not? Certainly, Kamala Harris has not been a negative for Biden, and that's probably a victory, frankly.